Welcome to WP Coffee Talk with your podcast barista, Michelle Frechette. Special thanks to our amazing sponsors, Sentry Hosting, Expander Digital, GoWP, and WP Explorer. WP Coffee Talk is a proud supporter of Big Orange Heart, whose mission is to support and promote positive well-being and mental health within remote working communities. Please consider a donation to Big Orange Heart to continue to support this great mission. Welcome to the next episode of WP Coffee Talk. I once again get to speak to an amazing community member in the WordPress community. Usually I know, well, I shouldn't say usually, but half of the people that I talk to on WP Coffee Talk, I've had the pleasure of meeting in person or at least meeting virtually before, but this is the first time that I get to speak with Tom Fanelli. So Tom, welcome to WP Coffee Talk. Thanks so much for being here with me today.
Thank you so much, Michelle. I'm super excited. And I think I heard you say you're going to be at WordCamp Miami, maybe, or Phoenix?
I will. WordCamp Miami at the end of February.
Awesome. And you're speaking there?
I am speaking, and I'm speaking. The title of my talk is Cups, Coffee, and Community, what I've learned over 100 episodes of WP Coffee Talk.
That is awesome. I love it.
Yeah.
Well, we'll meet there because I'm actually
Perfect.
originally from Florida. So I feel like I got to go to Miami and represent. So.
Well, I look forward to meeting you in person then, for sure.
Absolutely.
That's awesome. And we did get introduced to, I got introduced to you through Kate DeRosa, who is a common friend of ours. So thank you, Kate.
Yes, for sure.
Bringing us together today. So tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Sure. So I am the CEO and founder of a new startup in the WordPress space called Convesio. We do a sort of next generation new approach to hosting WordPress sites. But a little bit about my story. So I had mentioned I was originally from Florida. I started my career really early in the agency space. And in fact, it was like the mid to late 90s. And so it was early on, way before WordPress was around. And we started doing, all sorts of interactive and graphic design and stuff like that for Southwest Florida. And so in the Fort Myers, Naples area. And so basically, I had an opportunity after about 7 years of doing an agency to go in-house at a software company. And my DNA is really sort of at the intersection of tech, product, and marketing. And so went in-house at an agency, at a software company, and loved the SaaS software world. Fast forward, spent another 6 years there. Then I moved out to the Bay Area to sort of roll the dice on a startup. Was extremely fortunate. I worked in San Francisco for the last 9 years, and I've been out of my home for the last year or so. And so basically, we got out here. That startup got sold about a year after I was here. Then that company went public, and so within a couple of years of moving here, I had this amazing, startup to acquisition to IPO story, which was super exciting. And always at those larger companies, I had been running groups of people that were internal marketing services and agency folks. So we, for a lot of our customers who use the software, provided websites and SEO services. And, I had a team of 150 global marketers with a national photography team that I ran at that startup or at that company we took public. And then I left that company to work for one of the top 4 hosting companies in the US. And we hosted millions of websites. And we were kind of like an EIG. We acquired hosting companies. So I acquired one hosting company every quarter for the 3.5 years that I was there. And I ran product and engineering for that group. And that was a large team of probably, over 300 people globally.
Wow. So you have quite a history and experience in this space, which is wonderful.
Yeah, and I guess I've always been kind of frustrated. Sort of the genesis of this idea for Convesio was being an agency person. I really I'm a lot like an agency person. Like I talk to agency people and I'm like, oh, you're my people, And so I relate a lot to them, and I remember the struggles of running an agency. And I was always frustrated, having been in the enterprise space for a while, that hosting websites at the enterprise space, there's all sorts of amazing technology like disaster recovery and, high availability and all this redundancy and scaling, and containerization. And all of the websites that you see in the WordPress ecosystem, or at least for small and medium-sized businesses, are all hosted on pretty much the same cPanel legacy shared hosting type of environment, and eventually graduating to VPSs, but it still doesn't do anything to fundamentally change the way sites are hosted. And so that gap really bothered me. And so I had to take a shot at solving that problem, bringing sort of like enterprise scalability, performance, and uptime to priced in a way and delivered in a way that small and medium businesses could consume it primarily through the channel of agencies.
That's great. I love that. And we're going to talk a little bit more about halfway through our talk about exactly what you're doing with Convesio.
Sure.
First, I want to get to know you a little bit better. And the first thing I want you to do is show me your mug. Let's see what mug you got today.
I got a good one here for you. I got to represent this because I have a fairly large family. So
I see.
This is my wife. And then this is, sorry, there's a glare, my littlest son, Torin. Then this is TJ, my second to oldest. And by the way, this span here, I'll give you the span. This is Tristan right here, and then my daughter Trinity, and then me over here. And so my interesting story here, we had our first two kids 10 and a half months apart. So there's this weird time where my two oldest are the same age for like a month.
I think they call that Irish twins.
Yeah, I think I've heard different variations of the Irish twin thing, but yeah. And so it was our unexpected surprise, TJ, our boy. And so we had our girl Trinity and then TJ. And it took me a while before I was like, are things going to go back to normal? And my wife was like, this is the new normal.
I was going to say, what is normal?
You want to have more kids, let's not wait. So we have a big gap between those two. So they're 15, 14. Then we have a 7-year-old, and then Torin's 3. And so sometimes I was just telling someone, I'm 44 and I have a 3-year-old. I'm like, sometimes that freaks me out a little bit.
I'm about to make you feel way more normal.
Okay, awesome.
I am 51 years old, and my youngest brother is 11.
Wow, really?
Yeah. So there's
how many kids in your family?
There are 6. My dad's been married 3 times, so there's the 3 originals.
Okay.
And then my sister's in her 30s from my dad and his second wife, and then my dad and his third wife had 2 who are now 14 and 11.
Wow.
15 and 11, yeah.
That is awesome. I mean, it's cool in a lot of ways. My wife is the oldest of 5, and her youngest just graduated college in the last year, and her youngest brother. And so I don't know. I was an only child, so I didn't really have any context for this growing up. So, but in my mind, I keep telling myself, kids keep you young. So that's what I'm believing at the moment.
And there is no such thing as normal. So just let that go right out the window. What are you drinking in your wonderful mug today? I love your mug with your family on it.
Oh, thank you. It's Earl Grey tea, actually, in honor of Jean-Luc Picard. And
yes.
So I felt like, man, I need to revisit this because I've been watching it, and
So I've been an anti-Trekkie for a long time because my ex-husband was a total Trekkie. So like the whole ex-husband Trek thing, whatever.
Yeah, I can understand that.
But if I'm going to watch one, I'm going to at least try to watch Picard, and we'll see how it goes. My mug today, you can see my shawl today is my Wonder Woman shawl. It's
I was going to guess that, but I didn't want to just, I was like, I thought to myself, man, is that a Wonder Woman?
It is, and this was a gift from a woman in the WordCamp Hamilton, who showed me the pattern one year, and then decided that because of my contributions to WordPress, she wanted to gift it to me. So she gave this to me this year, which was wonderful. And I'm a huge Wonder Woman fan. And I'm actually using one of my many Wonder Woman mugs today. So
that's cool. I think I might have seen that actually on one of your other episodes, or maybe it was another one.
Yeah, it's also been in several pictures and things like that. And I'm drinking herbal tea today. It's chai. Turmeric chai.
Nice. So okay.
I'm reaping the benefits of turmeric in my life, so we'll see how.
I'm a huge Wonder Woman fan, so
I think
that's
fantastic.
a great theme. Yeah.
Yeah, I love it too. It's a lot of fun. How did you get started with WordPress? So what made you decide that WordPress was the way to go?
Yeah. So as I had mentioned, and I've said this on a couple podcasts, my first tool that I started building websites in was a product called Adobe PageMill. And so for those of you who have been in the space a long, long time, I remember when it was Macromedia Dreamweaver and then acquired by Adobe. And so I used all of those tools, and really when the notion of not having to code like straight up HTML websites, and you could have dynamic, I mean, I was using, gosh, like um, Perl script stores and everything in the early
Mm-hmm.
days, and form Perl form scripts and all that. And so the idea of having this stuff in a box in WordPress, all contained, and the ability to extend it, and really sort of, it was a dream in the early days. Like today,
Mm-hmm.
like we're here, right? It's awesome.
Right.
I would never use anything else. And so, yeah, so I started early on, as soon as WordPress sort of got released, experimenting with that and other systems like Drupal and Joomla. And occasionally in some of those corporate jobs, I was overruled on using WordPress, and people would be like, no, the dev team wants to use Drupal. And so, begrudgingly, I had to deploy some products on those platforms.
By the way, those are not your people.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. We'll call them misguided. So,
Okay, well,
um,
I'll allow that.
there you go. So anyway, yeah. And so really it's kind of always been there as an evolution, but I would say probably about, gosh, 6 years ago, well, no, gosh, it had to have been maybe 10 years ago now. I really got serious and decided to sort of go all in on WordPress and start to really, focus my skills and my sort of work and my advocacy to agencies to adopt WordPress and processes around WordPress. And really in the last year, but I've been one of those closet people, right? I've never really had gone to any of the community events. And there's a lot of us out there, that are big WordPress lovers, but yet we haven't really gotten into the community. And so in the last year with Convesio, I've really felt the desire to want to be able to go and contribute back. And so I
Mhm.
went to WordCamp US and did Contributor Day, and I'm on the hosting contribution team. And so it's been really exciting. And the people have been amazing. As awesome as the product is, the
Mhm.
people in the WordPress community are just mind blowing how
Yeah.
accepting and inviting they are and helpful. Yeah. People
And I
like
think,
Kate.
yeah, Kate's amazing. I think that we should have our new tagline. It should be like, "Come for the software, stay for the community."
I agree with you. That's a great, yeah, for
Absolutely.
sure.
When you look at people's websites, and we don't have to look at anybody in particular. I'm not saying look at mine, for example, but when you look at websites in general across the internet, what do you think is something that we as developers, designers, web builders don't focus enough attention on that would
Sure.
make the end user experience much better?
Yeah. So I will tell you right now, albeit, something that people are just beginning to become aware of, accessibility is a
Hmm.
huge thing, right? I think there's probably two trends and movements that I think are really critical. That I don't know if the second one is really usability, but privacy is what I would call it, right?
Hmm.
So accessibility and privacy, I think, are something that agencies are really, where there is so much monetization and transacting of data on the web, that it's just one of those things that privacy is becoming this sort of, you've got to have it. And we see all of the, we see California adopting the California Consumer Protection Act, the CCPA. And I follow a good friend of mine, Donato, over Termageddon,
Hmm.
which is an
Hmm.
awesome privacy policy product. And I just saw Florida, my home state, is going to put some laws in place. And so I think as developers and agencies and makers of websites,
Yeah.
we have to sort of lead the charge. I think that a lot of times customers will always sort of want things that are the pretty sort of like whatever their bells and whistles are. And it's usually
Hmm.
not privacy and it's not accessibility. And so we're
Hmm.
the tip of the spear to sort of advocate when we're selling websites to our customers and designing
Hmm.
them and building them, to incorporate these things to make, just the overall product more professional and inclusive.
Hmm.
So I think those are probably two of the big things. I'd say a couple others, and not necessarily in usability, but one of the things, well, this is usability. One of the things that irks me a lot is, and it's hard to do, right? It's even hard to do for my own sites, right? Is the having really good page speed scores, load time, performance, and there's so many different products out there that you can implement and use to boost your site's performance. But I think one of the things that I'm sort of personally always advocating to people is, problem is it takes more than just buying a theme and configuring content in it for the customer. It takes extra
Mm-hmm.
effort that a lot of times the agencies, it's not something necessarily the customer's going to notice right up front
Right.
when they look at the website, like the design and the layout and the
Mm-hmm.
photography. But it's something that I feel like agencies, again, sort of, there's a lot of agencies that are really on it, but there's a whole segment of agencies that it's just kind of flying below the radar, like making their
Mm-hmm.
site perform well. And what I've seen just being in this business is dealing with lots of large portfolios of sites that load better, that are, built and constructed really efficiently. They
Mm-hmm.
perform well. They're more compatible with changes that are happening. And so I think it's really important. I think that poorly built and poor efficiency in your website
Mm-hmm.
leads to other things that can be problems as technology evolves.
Yep, I think that all makes great sense. And if we are doing our job well, the end user, the site visitor, has no idea the effort that we've gone into to make their
That's exactly.
experience better, and that's part of the magic and the nuance of it for sure. Of course.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more.
When you think back over the different WordCamps you've attended, the meetups that you've attended, any kind of tech industry events, is there a moment or two that kind of stands out for you as something that was pivotal or inspirational? Whether you met somebody, whether you gave a talk, heard a talk, any of those kinds of things, and what was it that made a difference for you?
Yeah, so my first WordCamp was WordCamp US, and so I'm going to Phoenix and Miami, and I'm submitting to speak at several of these this year to sort
Great,
of
yeah.
advocate for things. We have an interesting story. We raised some money through crowdfunding that people in the WordPress space, particularly people that have products, are interested in hearing. And so I want to kind of advocate for that if, on the business side. But, I think probably at WordCamp US, there was a really cool moment. And I hope I'm not going to jump ahead here, but, one of your questions I know you shared with me is like,
It's okay.
who do I admire in this space? And Vito Peleg from WP Feedback
Hmm.
I watched his whole sort of startup launch of that product unfold before my eyes.
It was
And
what happened so fast. Like
yeah, right.
they accomplished so much in such little time.
Yeah, exactly. And so I look up to him a lot. I think he's just tremendous. And so at WordCamp US, he's kind of got his face on everything. So it's
Yeah,
hard to not like recognize him.
yeah.
So I'm walking up to the WordCamp venue and he's there and he's talking with another guy that I had known, Alex Denning, I think. And
Uh-huh.
we had a quick little sort of intro to each other. And he's like, "Oh yeah, I heard about you. You're the company that raised all that money with crowdfunding." And I was like starstruck for a moment because I was like, wait, no, no,
You
no.
heard of me?
I heard of you. I'm like, so anyway, that was a really cool moment. And then I think, and I wrote about this as I sort of did a recap of WordCamp, but I kind of went in thinking that some people had told me like, oh, like WordPress is real clicky, the community, and I had this sort of like, I'll call it stuff, that was on my mind about, oh my gosh, am I going to be like accepted in this group? If people are going to be nice to me? Am I going to be the outsider? And that was so far from reality. It was like
Hmm.
when I got there and I started meeting people, everyone was so nice. And it's crazy because that one WordCamp has spawned so many relationships with people
Hmm.
so quickly in the industry. Everyone's so inclusive. And I've been in a lot of different verticals over the years, right? So like my company I worked for in Florida was in the service dispatching vertical for like air conditioning, electric, and plumbers. I spent a bunch of time in the real estate vertical and property management software when I came out here to California. And I don't know, no other sort of vertical industry has been as inclusive as the WordPress industry have. So it's been really amazing and just awesome. And so there's been, it's like kind of a little star striking, I guess, to see these people you followed, all of these years, it's like,
Hmm.
who doesn't use Yoast in their,
Right.
And it's like, oh, there's Juiced, and it's like, and I replied to him on LinkedIn and he replied back to me and I'm like, oh my gosh, you're like a legend in the space.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, it's kind of really cool because it's like you're breaking into like Hollywood or something, but everyone's really friendly.
Imagine being me as a podcaster, and I get people asking to be on the show who are some of the people you're talking about. Like, the episodes haven't released yet, but like Marika van der Acht from Yoast, I've interviewed recently, and Vito Peleg, I've interviewed recently, and Ben Pines from Elementor, and some of these big names in the industry. And I just have to sit here and act cool, and inside I'm like fangirling all over everybody. So yeah, I completely understand what you're talking about.
Yeah. So, I mean, what's awesome though about this whole thing is the fact that there's enough community there where it's not just oh, how are you doing? It's like, hey, can I help you? Can I share some info? Let me answer some questions. Let me tell you what's worked for me and not for me. And so to be able to have the accessibility of people without any of the egos that come with it
Yeah,
has been just really, I think, an amazing experience for me, being new to
I
the community.
agree.
Yeah.
I've shifted my internal language from WordPress celebrity to WordPress well known, because nobody, with the exception of perhaps a few, has a celebrity mentality.
Right.
They just happen to be
Exactly.
better. They happen to have big names in the industry, but they don't walk around with entourages and
Right.
and expectations.
Yeah.
They're just well known folks, which is awesome.
Yeah. I love it.
Yeah, me too. So tell us a little bit about, Convesia. Tell us a little bit about the crowdfunding that you're talking about. Give us a little insight to who you are and your business.
Yeah, sure. So basically, so we are a hosting platform designed for agencies, although I don't like to call us a hosting platform. We're really sort of like a platform as a service that focuses
Mm-hmm.
on WordPress. And so I'll give you we'll take 2 minutes to give you the technical explanation of what we do.
Okay.
Most hosting providers, whether it be shared or VPSs, if you're an agency, you're going to put a bunch of sites either on a physical machine, like a shared hosting environment, or a VPS, which is essentially allocated computing capacity for all of your sites. And so they go on one VPS server, and you've got 10 or 15 or 20 or 100 sites running with an instance of MySQL and your files and PHP running. And most people are familiar with that idea, right? If any of those things fail in that computer, if the underlying hardware fails, if PHP crashes, if your file system gets corrupt, if your database server goes down, it takes down everything associated with that VPS or shared hosting provider.
Mm-hmm.
That has always been a bother to me, because it's this notion of like there's lots of single points of failure. And when you really think about the number of potential things that can affect this, right? Like all the plugins that we use, all the themes that we use, the custom coding, there's just numerous ways something could crash your
Mm-hmm.
database, your all this stuff, right? And so I really wanted to figure out how could we make a system or a platform for hosting WordPress that sort of wiped the slate clean, was a fresh approach, and had the resilience and redundancy and scaling of an enterprise system. So we adopted containers. A lot of people hear those as either Docker or Kubernetes or popular terms, but
Mm-hmm.
essentially containers like a really micro miniature VPS. Think of it like that, just
Okay.
running one specific sort of function or software. And so what we've done in our platform is we've basically broken out all the different layers of the services of WordPress. So we have a load balancer. And so every cluster we deploy has 3 servers on it. Okay. And so traffic comes in at the load balancer layer. It's routed to a container that's just running WordPress PHP. Okay. Then that connects to 6 containers that are running your database, and that's replicated across 3 physical servers. And then your file system's replicated across 3 or plus physical servers.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea here is that because we're using containers, if your site comes under load, we can replicate your WordPress container multiple times. So within seconds, we can spin up a fleet of containers to handle your WordPress stuff across multiple servers. And the load balancers will direct the traffic to those different containers.
Mm-hmm.
And then the traffic will be distributed across 3 different servers. giving it redundancy, and the scaling is the traffic's evenly distributed across those WordPress containers, and then the database is distributed across 3 different servers on multiple containers that's running. It's a Percona cluster. And so there's redundancy. If like one container fails, the system can repair it and recreate it really quickly. And the nice part about this is, if you have a surge of traffic, you only pay for what you need. And so an analogy that I use a lot of times is, and this is easy for people to understand, a lot of modern churches are streaming services on Sunday morning. And so they have a very big spike of traffic on Sunday morning, and then they've got nothing happening Monday night. Right. And in the traditional world, we would have to deploy dedicated hardware, virtual machines, and we'd have to prepare for the peak usage of that. And so they're essentially overpaying the rest of the time for all this latent horsepower that they don't need or are not using, because they need it on 2 times a week, right? When they have surges of traffic. And so our system allows you to scale up and then scale back down in seconds, depending on traffic surges. And that could be anything from really large email blasts, right? Social campaigns. And you don't pay any extra to have the ability to scale. You only pay when you need the scaling capacity. Okay. And so that's kind of what we're doing. And it's, I think, a new approach. We're not just taking all of WordPress and putting it on one VPS or a shared server. We've sort of broken it out into these scalable, distributable layers across multiple, machines on top of Google and AWS.
So I live in Rochester, New York. That means basically I'm not paying for snow plowing in July and yard work in December. So
that's a great analogy. That's perfect.
So I'm not paying my lawn guy 12 months out of the year. I'm only paying him whatever. So it makes perfect sense. Absolutely what you're saying. And I like it. It sounds to me like it has the potential for things to go faster too, because you're distributing resources, that your resources might work a little more expeditiously, if that's a word.
Right. Yeah. So I think we've got really 3 value props maybe that we're really honed in on right now, which is performance, scaling, and everybody says this, right? And I mean, there's a lot of great hosting companies out there that like I admire, there's competitors that we have like Kinsta, and I mean, they're just great companies, and they've done amazing work, right? I think where we kind of come in is we're sort of like Bay Area product people. We're not necessarily people that in hosting, there's a lot of people me tooing one another, right? Like a lot of people put up a server with cPanel on it and they're like, we're hosting, right? And what we're trying to do is take an innovative approach to creating a completely new tech stack for WordPress. And one of the things, and I know like that's aggressive terminology to use. Some people will probably recoil on that and like, well, there's only so many web servers you can use. The other thing that we really want to do though is help agencies manage large portfolios of sites. So our software that we're building, we have the infrastructure and server components of it, but then we also have the ease of use of our front end, which makes managing large portfolios of sites really simple and easy. And I would say we haven't yet delivered on that tremendously yet. We're sort of in the early stages where we're working on performance and scaling in our infrastructure, but eventually you're going to see us release things that we believe in, like no plugins needed, right? So we have a feature that hopefully will release in the next week or 2, which is all of the stuff that you'd use a plugin to do page speed optimization to get your page speed score up high, all within the platform. No need to install third-party plugins. Caching is in the platform. Backups is in the platform. And I realize a lot of hosts have that right now, but our vision is to do things much greater than this that make the lives of agencies much easier.
Yeah, it's easy. It's Herculean to build a huge website. You put all this effort into it, and then you have to continue to maintain it and everything afterwards, when most agencies want to get onto the next creative thing, right, and not necessarily having to do all of those maintenance and things. So to be able to, whether they're white labeling it through you or, outsourcing, whatever their relationship is with their customer and how they work with you, it just sounds like it makes their life a little easier and lets them move on to the next creative, which is where they're their real chops are, so to speak.
Yeah. I mean, we sort of like, if you're an agency that firefights speed, performance, downtime issues, like we take that off of your plate totally.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's sort of what our driving force is, right? To make
Mm-hmm.
agencies more profitable and take the hassle and worry out of all their hosting.
I love it. That's wonderful. So you are now going to be starting to go to more meetups and more word camps and really getting the word out a little bit more. And especially if you can get in and do some talks, I think that'll be really exciting.
Yeah. Yeah. And to your point, I forgot to mention, so what was the genesis of this crowdfunding that we had done, right?
Right.
So,
Mm-hmm.
and this is something a lot of WordPress folks seem to be really interested in. And I think agencies should be interested in it as well, because we're going to see more and more of this. So in 2016, Congress changed the law. They introduced the Jobs Act. And part of that was, in the past, you had to be an accredited investor to invest in startups. And that was basically, you had to have a net worth over $1 million or verifiable income for two or 3 years at over 200K. And that would allow you the ability to be able to make investments in companies, right? And so the Jobs Act changed that. And so what happened was they said, okay, well, you can invest smaller amounts of money in companies. And so what has risen up out of that has been sites like Kickstarter, where they
Mm-hmm.
marry a bunch of investors with products that need investment. The difference is with Kickstarter, and there's a lot of confusion on this, with Kickstarter, it's, you don't really get any equity in a company. You get a perk, right? You're
Right.
pre-ordering something, or you get your name on a plaque or whatever. In crowdfunding, it's regulated by the SEC and FINRA. So there's a lot of like due diligence a company
Mm-hmm.
like us has to go to have an offering on crowdfunding. It takes about 3 or 4 months to prep for that, depending on the speed of work that you're doing. You have to have reviewed financials and all that. And basically, that then allows you to offer up a equity in your company in a variety of forms to the crowd of investors. And so we had 853 investors was the last count, and we raised somewhere around 1.2, 1.3 million. And so it was a really big success for us. The campaign
Yeah.
ran. We were fortunate. We had some really cool events happen. So right as we launched the campaign, news broke that WP Engine acquired Flywheel, and they disclosed that they were doing about 18 million in annual recurring revenue. And so that was a big deal, because all of a sudden people were like, oh my gosh, there's an acquisition that just happened for a lot of money. And they just, there was probably 3 things. One, they disclosed they were going to have an IPO. They were heading towards
Mm-hmm.
a $1 billion plus IPO. WP Engine was. They disclosed that Flywheel within 6 years got to 18 million in annual recurring revenue, and there was the fact that they had acquired them. And so
Mm-hmm.
those 3 things are perfect for investors to see that there's viability in a market and growth in a market.
Mm-hmm.
I'm really, really just, I'm very positive about the outlook of the WordPress space. I think after we see WP Engine go public, we're going to also see Automatic probably have an IPO. You know, they just took that large investment from Salesforce's venture arm for 300
Mm-hmm.
million. And so I think there's going to be a lot of, there's a very promising future for the WordPress community.
I love it. I feel like we need to have our own version of Shark Tank now, like Word
Ooh,
Tank or
that's a good
something,
idea.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, Only it would be a podcast, because like people aren't going to tune in on a Sunday night to watch
I
that.
feel like maybe Syed from Awesome Motive is probably
All
one of
right.
the guys that should be on that.
For sure, for sure.
He should be a shark.
That's right. We need another word besides shark. Maybe like the
Yeah, that's
Wahoo
right. Yeah.
Wahoo tank or something. I don't know. Too funny. Let me move into what I call the rapid fire questions. Let's see what kind of
All right,
answers you
sure.
have here. What are 2 or 3 must-have plugins that you would recommend to somebody who's building a website?
I would say that WordFence. I think WordFence is an amazing product and an
Mm-hmm.
amazing team. And in my opinion, they're a great security plugin.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's a really good plugin. I think that Yoast is really great for SEO. I think that's a phenomenal product for doing SEO. And let's see if we can spice it up a little bit here on the third one. Well, I would say if you're not using, this isn't spicy, but if you're not using a hosting provider that provides these type of things, you absolutely positively need backup type of software or caching plugins, things like
Yeah.
that. And I think Blog Vault is a really good one.
Mm-hmm.
They're great, but Backup Buddy is also really good.
Mm-hmm.
And then WP Super Cache or WP three Total Cache is also really good. Those are kind of like table stakes plugins. If I
I was
think
gonna
of a
say,
more exciting one, I'll let you know.
I didn't hear any spice yet, but yeah, okay.
No, it wasn't. Yeah, there was nothing spicy, but those are like what I would consider essential must-have
Yeah.
plugins.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't think of building a site without one of those.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll tell you one of my favorite ones that I don't think anybody's mentioned yet in almost 100 episodes is now I'm gonna forget what it's called actually. It's clone it post
Oh my gosh, I use that all the time. I can't.
yeah, I can't think of
Yeah.
what it's called, but to clone the post, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
like
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
post duplicator.
Post duplicator. Yeah, that's it.
So that you
Yeah.
can clone your pages and your posts without having to, just copy and paste and things like that. And I love that. And it's in the repository
Yeah.
and it just makes life so much easier.
It's on like every site that I have, I think. I mean, it's like you
Yeah,
have to have it. It's so like basic. It's like one of those things you forget that it's there all the
yeah,
time because you're using it.
exactly.
Yeah.
So
So
there's my tip. I don't put them out very often in my episodes, but yeah, it's fun sometimes to be able to tell you what I like
yeah,
to.
absolutely.
At any point in your WordPress or business journey, have you had a mentor, whether it was official or unofficial type mentor relationship, and who was it?
Yeah. So I've had some corporate coaches before, which have
Hmm.
been really good. But I've had the fortune of having some really amazing bosses that I've worked for.
Hmm.
And so at some really large companies, and so I feel like in that respect, some of my bosses that I had previously, I've had people all the way from the Steve Jobs persona to a much more laid back business persona. I have people that are like very product centric and some that are very business centric and others that are very team centric. And what's been great is that I have the opportunity. I'm like a sponge, I'll absorb all sorts of things
Sure.
with people from people I work with. And so to have the ability to be able to see what a product centric leader is like and a business focused leader like
Hmm.
finance and numbers and operations and a team relational leader has been really tremendous for me. And though they've not all been from the Bay Area, my last boss was in Boston, but a couple of the guys have been leaders here out of the Bay Area, and it's been amazing to work with them. And I don't think they would consider themselves mentors or coaches, but they helped shape who I am and my
Hmm.
sort of leadership skills and approach to things.
That's
So,
great.
yeah,
I think we don't always think about who our mentors are, but we have them for sure. Like I said, sometimes it's not official.
right.
We haven't sought out something in particular, but those people that have had influence in a positive way over our career, always grateful for those people for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
Who's somebody in the WordPress community that you admire and why?
Well, I mentioned Vito
Hmm.
he's just done a tremendous job, and I don't know whether it's because he's I'm constantly seeing him on social media, so it's sort of like it's very reinforced that he's there.
Yeah.
I just have watched that launch that he did for WP Feedback, and he just announced that they hired Jan Koch from Agency
Hmm.
Highway to be their
Yeah.
CTO now, I think, and that's huge news. And I mean, wow, like he's building a killer team of people, and that product is just really what I love about it is that it's kind of one of those products where if you've been in an agency, that's a pain point. Yet there wasn't a lot of people out there trying to solve it.
Hmm.
And so it's kind of like when he made that splash, you're like, duh, yeah, of course we need a product like this.
Yeah.
And you've done an amazing job building it. And so it's really solving a pain point for an agency. And so I also like the fact that it's kind of in my space with my people, agency people. I love things that make their lives easier. And so I just think that's a great product.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of folks, similar to Vito that are out there, people that I've been sort of huddling with, there's Mark Westgard from WS Forms. I think that's one of the form plugins that probably flies under the radar. That product is so amazing, and it's just really great. And then there's Donata from Termageddon. I mean, these people are building great businesses. Donata's trajectory of growth has been awesome. In fact, she's the reason I'm actually doing podcasts. Is she was basically like, one of our big success factors has been podcasts. And so I've been on a sort of a rush to get on as many podcasts as I can.
Donata and Hans, I actually, their episode isn't out yet either, but they have been on by the time yours airs, theirs will have aired as too.
You gotta start pre-marketing this. The people are gonna be like, real excited to hear these podcasts. You could generate a lot of buzz.
It's so hard when you have a full-time job like I do, and then I have a couple of side gigs, right? So I just launched a 404play.com, building custom 404 pages for people, which is, I don't think there's a business that does that right now and comes up with creative and unique 404 pages. And then, you have to check it out, 404play.com. And then I just launched kindnessis2020.org, which is just my own push for kindness in the world. And so my side ventures, and then I think, I've got to keep this podcast thing going too. So I'm spinning a lot of plates right now, but I'm having a lot of fun with it for sure.
That's awesome. That's really great.
It's great. Yeah. So what's something you want to learn in WordPress but haven't tackled yet?
I would say one of the things that I have never coded a theme from scratch. And I would say that's probably one of the things that is, if I had the white space to sit down and like focus on a weekend project or something like that, that would probably be it. I think I could do it. I've worked with a lot of themes. Like I understand the structure themes, but like I've never personally, taken a design and just coded it into a WordPress theme. I've done a ton of, designs to HTML, CSS, but not made that last leap, because it's funny, like in our career trajectories, there becomes a point where it's like, it's a better use of your time to give that to someone does that full time.
Absolutely.
And is a pro at it, and then focus on the things you can really do to drive value for yourself. And it was kind of like at the point in time where I wanted to start coding themes and building sites like entirely in WordPress, I was like it's probably better to let somebody else do it, and me focus on like running the agency and all that kind of stuff. And so that kind of, I sort of missed that, right? And I have a laundry list of like things that I'd love to do that are like, like, I mean, there's a bunch of programming languages and stuff I'd love to get into that, but it's like, security stuff, I mean, that I'd love to go deeper technically on, but it's just not a super great use of my time. And that's unfortunate, right? But, maybe retirement.
Is it unfortunate? I mean,
probably not from a fun perspective, because I find that stuff like fun, but especially with 4 kids, it's hard to get like uninterrupted headspace where it's like, I'm going to go in and learn, a new language or something.
Right. But then you look at yourself and you say, I've got 4 kids, or I could learn the language and my kids are only going to be kids for a short time period.
That's exactly right. Yes.
And so
you're exactly right.
Sounds to me like you've got your priorities straight. So
my wife always tells me, and this is a weird thing, she's like, she always counts how many summers we have left while they're in our house. And she'll be like, you only have, 3 more summers left and to make memories. And I'm like, oh, that really puts things in perspective.
So I have a 27-year-old daughter. When she turned 9, I had a little mini breakdown because I literally started to cry, and I said I was a single mom at the time. I said to my mother, I've already had her half as long as I'm going to, kind of thing. And I'm like, I only get 9 more years before she's off and running. Little did I know she'd live with me till she was 22. But
that's awesome. So secretly, that's what I'm hoping for. So
yeah, exactly. She's getting married this year, so life is changing very rapidly.
Oh man, so she's really going out of the nest now. So she
is. She doesn't live even in my city anymore, but still, she's my baby, and now she's gonna be, a married woman. But anyway, enough about that. What's your proudest WordPress moment? Oh, I skipped it. Wait, go back to it. What's the biggest WordPress mistake you made, and what did you learn from it? That's the first question.
Oh my gosh, the biggest WordPress mistake. Okay, I will tell you the biggest mistake, and I see people do this all the time, customizing WordPress in non-standard ways, hacking the core code. I'm like, that is like, why would you do this? It's such a bad idea, you know?
Yeah.
And so I'm like, there's so many other ways you can do things in, supportable ways that are not going to, and like, that's probably my biggest mistake early on. Now, in my defense, I will say there was many less ways you could extend WordPress in those older days. But
Right.
now there's so many awesome things that you can do. There's zero reason to hack, WordPress and make it for most 98% of all websites. I feel like there's like no reason to do
Right.
that. Um,
And early on in those days too, you didn't get that, danger Will Robinson kind of
that's
warning
right.
either. It was like, here it is, do whatever you want with
That's right. Yeah,
it.
exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, that conjures up nightmares and slight feelings of anxiety when I didn't even know I didn't even know you were going to ask that question, but
Yeah.
immediately that was the thing that popped in my head because I've been traumatized
Yeah.
over that before. So
Yeah.
anyway,
Your first white screen of death will do that to you.
yeah, that's right. Exactly. So
But the next question is my favorite though. What is your proudest WordPress moment?
well, so I would say that the proudest moment that I've had, and I'll tie this in with startups. So this Convesio is the first company that I've done where I feel like it's my baby, This is my idea. It was my sort of itch to scratch. And I've worked in a lot of other startups and those products weren't mine, but I was excited about them. But I never really had understood like a lot of in the Bay Area, there's this massive push. People are like serial entrepreneurs, serial startup people, and they love the startup world. And I never totally understood why. And I figured it out in the last, year with Convesio, which is the moment that you see customers and not like your friends and family, but like people you don't know who fall in love with your product and
Mm-hmm.
like get it, that moment is so magical and it feels so good that it is the driving. It's like the first time you feel love, I think,
Yeah.
right? And it's like that young teenage love, and it's so magical and so exhilarating that you found, like, you built a product and found an audience for it that loves it
Mm-hmm.
and is passionate about it.
Mm-hmm.
That moment is it's really special. And I could see why a lot of entrepreneurs chase after that feeling from startup to startup to startup.
Yeah, I can understand that too. It makes a lot of sense. The first
Yeah.
time somebody who I didn't know followed the podcast on Twitter and
Yeah.
things like that, I was like, they don't know me and they like it. So yeah, I
Who's this
completely
person?
understand it. I know exactly. It's like strangers like it's like Sally Field, right? You love me, you really love me. If you weren't working in web technology, this industry, what's another career that you might like to attempt?
Hmm. So I have on and off been in various teaching and speaking roles. I love to teach people. I just did a computer science course for some homeschooling kids last year,
Mm-hmm.
and it was awesome. I mean, I love just teaching people different things. I've taught,
Mm-hmm.
classes on Photoshop over the years and various different things. And so I love speaking, I love teaching. And so if I wasn't, doing anything with computers or tech, I would probably be doing something in teaching, and or speaking. But and maybe consulting. I occasionally have these wild dreams of like leaving technology behind, right? And be like, what if I was like, did something totally. I had a buddy of mine who was in all of these tech startups and then went to work for a coffee company. And I was like, what? And he's like, I just need a break from tech. And
Yeah.
so, and so it's one of those things where I think occasionally I flirt with these ideas of like, what would I do if I wasn't going to be in technology?
Mm-hmm.
But this is really sort of who I am. And so
Yeah.
until something happens that totally derails it, it's my foreseeable future.
As long as you're in love with it, that's all that matters.
That's right. That's right.
What's something on your bucket list?
Well, I think the immediate thing for me is to speak at WordCamp. I think
Mhm.
that's I think from in the WordPress community perspective of things, I think that's um, as I mentioned, I have applied to multiple WordCamps. Haven't had a taker yet. So I think the first 3 or 4 I've applied to, I think I would have heard by now. So, but I'm going to keep at it.
Sure.
And so, I think I also want to help organize a WordCamp or,
Hmm.
help go work one. And I'd say like sort of in my life outside of WordCamp, I'm Italian. I've got a huge Italian heritage and family. And so I really want to go to Italy. And so
Hmm.
I'm might actually make that happen because I'm thinking about trying to do WordCamp Europe and wrap it into a little bit of a vacation for the family while we're
Nice.
over there.
That'd
So
be awesome.
if I get that close, I'm going to Italy for sure.
Good for you. Absolutely. You should. If you get to Europe, go to Italy for
Yeah,
sure.
absolutely.
I've never been there, but it's definitely on my list as well. Show us or tell us about one of your hidden talents, maybe something the WordPress community doesn't know about you.
Well, yeah. So, believe it or not, I went to school for music and
Hmm.
audio recording, and so I'm a drummer. And so that's not a very well-known thing about me. And I would say I'm a better recording engineer than I am a drummer because it's the technology side of things. It's
Hmm.
just kind of like I
It's who
went to
you
record.
are.
I went to recording school and I was like, "Ooh, I'm really good at this." So yeah, so I would say that's a hidden talent that nobody knows about is I'm a musician and a pretty good recording engineer and technical live sound guy.
That's actually pretty cool. And if you get an opportunity to organize a WordCamp, those skills will come in very handy because that's the part where things usually fall apart is recording and getting those recordings up and running and shared out to the community. So it's not probably as technical as what you're talking about, but definitely your
Well, it's good to
expertise
know
can be
that's a
used there.
need. Yeah, it's good to know. Yeah,
It
I've
really
seen that
is.
on the list of things, and I figured just like it's such a tech audience, they've got to have that covered, you know.
You would be
So
surprised. You'd be surprised. How can we find you online? What's your Twitter handle? How do we find your website? Give us some details. And of
yeah,
course, we'll put them in the show notes as well. So they will be
awesome,
online, but tell us what they are.
cool. Yeah, so you can go to convesio.com, convesio.com, and my Twitter handle is T Fanelli. I think it's you can find me in Slack if you search for Tom Fanelli or T Fanelli. And yeah, and so you can find me at the Convesio website or on LinkedIn or Twitter.
Very good. Well, anything else you'd like to share with us before we sign off for this episode?
No, it's been awesome. Thank you so much for having me. And I look forward to continuing to watch your shows and yeah, maybe chatting in person in Miami.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for being here today. Really appreciate you taking the time to share your story with me and with the WP Coffee Talk audience. And thanks so much for being here.
Thanks, Michelle. Appreciate it.
No problem. See everybody on the next episode.
Bye.
Bye-bye.